Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer, member, FINRA/SIPC. Registered representative, securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member, FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisor representative, Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Fujiyama Wealth Management and Cambridge are not affiliated.
Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Lee Cantor here with Junko Horvath. This is my favorite show of the month that we do, Junko's Health, Wealth, and Happiness Hour, brought to you by our good friends at Fujiyama Wealth Management. Welcome, Junko.
Thank you.
Once again, you brought some
Great.
interesting people
that
are doing amazing things here in Atlanta.
Yeah. So I can't wait.
You can't wait to learn more about what they got going on?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so who'd you bring?
So I brought Alyson Lembeck, family law lawyer, partner from Ellis Funk in Bucket, right? Yeah.
And who else?
Who else? So I brought Marsha Shackman, licensed clinical social worker in Roswell, Atlanta behavioral consultant.
So this is going to be exciting. These ladies have a lot of cool stuff going on.
Yeah. So it's going to be really good for people,
Yeah, they're going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
So who are you going to start with?
Okay, I go with Marsha. So can you describe your practice as a clinical social worker? What exactly do you do as a clinical social worker?
Yes, so I have a private practice in Roswell, and as a clinical social worker, I am a therapist, a psychotherapist that works with adults and children in a counseling practice, and my practice revolves mainly around families that are in transition, that are divorcing or having been divorced, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But as a therapist, we work with mental health issues and as well as any issue that an adult or a child has in my practice. So I see both adults and children and help them out therapeutically from a mental health standpoint.
I see. I wonder how they come to you first. Recommended by someone, or they kind of decide?
Yeah, usually it's a recommendation, but a lot of times people will Google mental health therapists and they'll get to a website.
Yeah.
They usually have a particular reason why they're wanting to talk with somebody. And so they might look up divorce, and then they find the website with the work that I do with divorcing families, and they'll call me or email me for information. But most of the times it's referrals from other people who have seen me, or maybe from their physician or their psychiatrist, could be from their hairdresser, somebody that knows me. And so referrals come many, many different ways. Good portion of my referrals come from people like Alyson, from attorneys, because that's a large part of my practice.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. So let me ask Alyson then. Can you describe your practice as a family law practitioner? What exactly do you do?
Well, I'm an attorney, and so the majority of work that I do is dealing with people going through divorce and helping them through that process. I see individuals also after divorce that are having issues with either compliance with their ex-spouse, complying with their agreements, or they need to modify their agreements, meaning change it after the fact. And we also do prenuptial agreements for people that want to have agreements in advance of getting married so that they don't end up in a litigious divorce. But the bulk of what I do is helping people through the divorce process, giving them legal advice to help them make really smart decisions, protecting their assets, helping them emotionally through the process, And a lot of times these cases involve children. And that's where I think it's really crucial for them to have help from someone like Marcia, who has a psychological background, to help them through the process. So I'm their attorney, I'm their legal counsel, and I give legal advice to them and certainly counsel them through it. But I find it exceptionally helpful for people to have someone by their side helping them psychologically, because divorce is one of the hardest things for people to go through. And so I help them through that process by answering their legal questions, giving them legal advice, having them make smart decisions, and then pair them up typically with someone like Marcia to help them psychologically be able to be strong enough to get through the process.
I see. So where do those people come from? Like, do they find you, or how do they decide to come to you?
So I've been practicing family law for over 16 years in Georgia. And so I've been, I've had a lot of clients, and I've been fortunate to have good relationships with my clients and have successful outcomes. And many of those clients end up referring to me. I also get a lot of referrals from other professionals. So people like yourself, if you are going to someone for financial advice, you may be in a situation where they say, Junko, my daughter's getting married and we have a business and I need to protect the assets. Maybe I should look into a prenuptial agreement. Or you might have a client that's close with you that says, I'm about to go through divorce and I need a trusted advisor. So a lot of times other attorneys that practice in other areas of the law that know me will refer to me. Psychologists who hear for the first time from their clients that they are looking to divorce, they will refer to me. I have a lot of following on Facebook even. And a lot of people these days go to the internet, and there are different moms groups in Facebook that will refer to me. And my involvement in the Jewish community, I have a lot of connections there as well. So I'm just out there as a family law practitioner doing my good work, and luckily that serves a lot of referrals coming my way.
That's great. Yeah. How about you, Marcia?
Well, my referrals typically, like I said, are coming from word of mouth, other clients that have used me. A lot of my referrals come from other attorneys, sometimes judges, and other therapists who know the area of specialization that I work in, that they do not have the expertise to work in.
That's great. So, Marcia, do you only work with clients that are actively divorcing? You said divorcing and divorced.
Right. So, no, I will work with clients that are considering divorce. A small portion of my practice is a clinical practice, so I might have folks that are coming in who have gone through marital therapy, and therapeutically they've decided that they want to divorce. So they're transitioning into the divorce process. Sometimes we call that discernment counseling, where someone is considering the divorce process. They might work on it for a little while, and then they choose to proceed with divorce. But a lot happens after divorce. So Alyson is really good in helping to get clients through the divorce process, through the legal process. But I always say that you start living the divorce after it's all over. And a good portion of folks will spend time with me as they transition through, okay, the legal part is over, and now I have to get used to the changes as a result of the divorce. Now that we have two separate homes, the adults having to manage being single parents, the children having to manage that they now have their homes with mom and their homes with dad. So I'm in there working with the kids as they're dealing with the adjustment, and also working with the parents as they're dealing with the adjustment. And then we have some cases where there's a lot of conflict and what we call co-parenting, where I have to work with clients afterwards to kind of teach them how to move into a co-parenting relationship.
That's a tough role. It's rewarding, but it's people. You see people in a struggling stage.
Yes,
you know?
yes. You see people that are struggling and usually in the most challenging part
That's
of their
true.
lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're going through the same process as if somebody died. It's the same grief process.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So, Alyson, what type of client do you work with specifically?
I work with a wide range of clients. I have some clients that are looking to divorce after a year of marriage, and some clients that are looking to divorce after 60 years of marriage. So it
60
really,
years?
it
Wow.
really runs the gamut
Yeah.
of the clients I see. Some clients have children and have custody issues that they're trying to resolve, where they're in litigation over who should have parenting time with which parent. I have some cases that don't involve children at all, where there's just assets and debts to divide. I have some clients that have never been married but have children together, and they need to have assistance in how to work out their parenting disagreements and their parenting plan going forward. I have some same-sex clients who are looking to divorce. So really, I have clients that have all different kinds of backgrounds, and I assist anyone that's looking to get help through the divorce process. And so it's really a wide range of people that I work with.
Yeah. So what kind of roles do you play? Like you play the role like with
Well, I am trained in various different areas. So primarily I represent people in the attorney role, where I'm their advocate, meaning I am there to help them through the process and advocate for their rights and really give them legal advice. But I also have training as a guardian ad litem, for example, and in that role, the courts, the judges actually appoint me to the cases to give recommendations as to custody for the children, as to what is in their best interest. So in that role, I'm actually advising the judge as to who I think should have custody. And I think that background and experience helps me be a better family law practitioner, especially helping people get through custody cases. I also am a trained mediator, so there are cases where attorneys hire me to help them resolve their cases, where I meet with both sides, or if the parties don't have attorneys but they want help resolving their case, I am in that role as a neutral, and I help them resolve their case without the litigation. So I have a lot of different training involved, and some of my cases are as cooperative as can be, and we draft up documents for them, very simple and amicably. And some of my cases go to a final trial where we're in court numerous days fighting over the different division of assets and custody. But most of my cases fall somewhere in between there, where we have, two parties that need assistance, getting them through the process, and they'll reach a resolution at some point, usually with the help of a good mediator. And I help guide my clients on dividing their assets, dividing their debts, and coming up with a parenting schedule that works for the family.
Very interesting. Yeah. So how about you, Masha? What are the various roles while working as a licensed clinical social worker?
Right. Well, I wear lots of different hats, and one is the clinical hat. So as a trained therapist, I keep a very small private practice where I am working with adults with mental health issues, whether it's dealing with depression or anxiety or any issue that comes up for them. I will only work with kids when it is centered around divorce. But from the divorcing arena, in terms of the various ways that I help clients, we have what we call divorce coaching. So somebody is needing some assistance and some support, some basic support getting through the divorce process, wanting information. I will work with a client that way. And then I have what we call co-parent specialist or co-parent therapist. And that's where typically an attorney will ask me to work with both parties, with the couple, helping them to transition through the divorce process and to learn how to go from a marital position into a binuclear family and how to be co-parents, how to do that appropriately so that the kids can be healthy. Because we know that kids can get through the divorce process. We know adults can get through the divorce process, but we want everybody to be healthy on the other side. And so it's really, really important to teach adults how to move into a new role. And there are new roles. As a co-parent, you are no longer that marital couple, and the boundaries change.
Yeah.
You don't become friends. You're co-parents, and those boundaries are very different than friends. So my role is to help keep the conflict down. We, like Alyson, has some cases that will go all the way to trial, and then some cases that she doesn't have to do very much, just divide assets and have a parenting plan. With that being said, I have cases where there's higher conflict, and in higher conflict we have more what we call parent coordination, where I'm sometimes called in to help clients very clearly make decisions if they can't make decisions, because we don't want them revolving back through the courts, because the court is there to help them divorce, but the court doesn't know how to help them to parent and there are lots of decisions, how to make decisions for their children.
It's very complicated. So what are the different options for divorce? Litigation, mediation? How do you decide when to do the litigate?
Well, typically I'll meet with a client for about an hour, hour and a half in an initial consultation. And in that first appointment, I'm really getting to know the client, trying to figure out what their goals are, trying to understand a little bit about the spouse that they're looking to divorce, try to get an understanding of the assets and if there's any custody issues. During that conversation, I a lot of times will assess the situation to see, is this a couple that can handle a cooperative divorce, that could come to the table in a cooperative or friendly manner, amicable manner, and try to work through the issues? Or is this a couple that is going to have to go through the court process, and that is more of a litigation process? So it really depends on the couple and what the issues are. But most cases will start on a litigation path, meaning we file for divorce, we start through the court process, and most judges these days will require mediation as part of that process. And so at some point in the process, after we've exchanged information and we have enough information to try to resolve the case, we'll end up at a mediation with a neutral mediator, and those cases are highly effective to get them resolved. And that's always the goal, because if the two people can come to a solution without a third party, a judge, telling them what to do, it's less expensive, and they're part of the solution. I tell them, you've made your own choices in this situation, and you've have self-determination rather than giving it up to a third-party judge. So most of my cases will go down that path and will resolve without going to court. And then there's some cases that there are just things that cannot get resolved. For example, if there's a couple and one person wants to move out of state and they can't agree on which parent should have custody, that is not a case that that is likely to resolve, and then the judge has to make those decisions. So we have to decide at some point if these couples can get to the point where they can reach an agreement, and if not, then that's where the judge comes in and makes a decision.
So now, Alyson, when a person is going through a divorce, I don't know how this works. I've been married a long time, so this is all
Forever,
for 31 years. So my question is, so you're the attorney for one of the people, right? Like they don't have an attorney for both of them, and
that is against our ethical guidelines because there's a conflict of interest. So I will represent.
It's more expensive.
Well, it can be, but it's usually a good idea for both parties to have their own attorney to give them their own legal advice. But there's a lot of times where I will work with the other attorney on the other side, and we will negotiate a deal that will help resolve their case.
So is the communication, so the divorcing couple, the husband and wife, are they in the husband or wife is talking to you, the other attorney's talking to the other husband or wife, and then the two attorneys talk?
So it can happen. It can happen numerous different ways. One way is correct. There is where I talk to my client, and then the other side is talking to their client, and then the two attorneys discuss solutions, and we get it resolved by negotiating attorney to attorney.
But that's like in separate, like you're in your office, the other
Correct.
attorney. So this is all happening like over the phone?
Over the phone, with letters, with emails. That's one way. The most common way is mediation. And that's where everyone gets together in one office. Most of the mediation occurs where I'm in one room with my client, the other client is in the other room with their attorney, and the mediator, the neutral, goes back and forth and tries to help reach a resolution.
Like just they get up and move to room?
Exactly. And they start closing the gap, and they figure out what are the issues in dispute, and they start chipping away and coming up with solutions and ideas. And then once we reach a resolution, we sign it that day. You typically an outline that says this is our deal points, and it's done. And most judges these days are requiring that before they even see you in the courtroom, because they know how effective it is.
So now when you're doing it, that like if you had a bell curve of all your cases, is the vast majority, the big hump in the middle of the bell curve, is that how mediation, and it's kind of amicable? And then the edges are, okay, these are people that really are not in a good place, so they're going to,
just to clarify, mediation doesn't necessarily mean you're amicable. Mediation is a facilitation to get to a solution, and most times people going into mediation are not amicable. But both of them have really good reasons to get it resolved. One is it saves attorneys fees, and two is, like I said, they are part of that process. They have a say in the outcome. Whereas if you go to court, you're going to Vegas. You're rolling the dice. You're letting the judge decide the fate of what your parenting plan is going to look like, how long you're going to see your kids. And most people, even if they don't get along, they do not opt for that option. Most people will realize there's enough expense and enough risk that they're going to get it solved. And so mediation is a process to help two parties, whether they're amicable or not, reach solutions. And I'm a trained mediator, and when I'm in that role, I'm there as a reality tester to tell people if they think that their outcome is going to be one way. I can say, I've been practicing for over 16 years, and I've seen this, judge. It might not come out the way you think it's going to come out. I will be there to tell them how expensive it will be to get to that trial or how long it will take. And so in that process, as a mediator, you're there to reality test people, and most people will get it resolved when they're all at the table.
And then also sometimes I too am a trained mediator. And sometimes we have cases where an attorney will send a couple to me, and I will actually mediate the parenting plan, because my area of expertise is knowing about child development. Mm-hmm. And basically there's 2 points that we have to get through in a divorce, one being the financial and the other being the parenting issues. And so a lot of times I will mediate where I keep the couple in the room and together, and they are working on their parenting plan, and I am giving them information. So I'm educating them. If they have questions regarding, they might have a 2-year-old child, but we're making a parenting plan all the way through until that child is 18. So they only see the child as a 2-year-old. I try to help them see the child as a 10-year-old, as that adolescent, and then as that teenager and young adult, and move them all the way through that in helping them in making those decisions. And then somebody such as a financial neutral might mediate the financial piece. So that's another way of providing mediation.
So now when you're working with them and you're kind of showing them what the future holds, because a lot of times they're kind of focused on the present, right? And
Yes.
They're not even imagining a teenager if
Correct.
they're 2 years old, right? So when you work out a divorce, so that is a divorce for the whole time. It's not in stages, right? You don't divorce when the kids are little and then have a different divorce plan, or is it something that's negotiated throughout the lifetime of at least up to the 18-year-old child?
Well, the goal is to get them divorced and have them
Like one
never
time.
come back to the scene to redo their documents. In reality, many people have to come back after the fact because as children grow older, they have different needs and they need or people change their financial status. They start earning more or less money. And so frequently people come back to the table. But one thing that Marcia does really well, and why I've referred clients to her, is that she will try to look into the future. So if, for example, there's young children, we could come up with a parenting plan that has different phases for different ages. And so those people have a built-in plan then where they don't have to come back to the table. And that is the best solution.
So you can anticipate that ahead of time because you guys have done it.
Yes, many times.
Right.
Many times. And yesterday I sat with a couple. Unfortunately, the baby isn't born yet.
And they're divorcing.
And they are divorcing. Yes, the baby is due soon, but they've chosen to divorce, and they want to be really good co-parents. So we are talking about things such as, let's choose a name for the baby. How are you going to do that? And then how are we going to deal with after the baby's born and bonding with both mom and dad? And we know that a newborn needs to be attached to both parents and have a lot of time with each parent. So that's sometimes, we always think about divorce and kids, that the kids are already here, but sometimes the child is not always here.
Wow.
And we also have to think about the fact that sometimes we have special needs, whether it is a physical disability, an emotional disability, and we've got to consider how that's going to transgress through the child's life. So we have to make a parenting plan that also addresses any of the both mental health or physical health needs of the children.
And in this case of the child that's not even born, you don't even know.
No, we don't know. No, we don't know. Now, you can always modify, and Alyson can speak to that. You can always go back and try to modify the parenting plan or even the financials. But we do try to come up with a parenting plan because the majority of our clients, the children are already here.
Now, when you spend all your time working with divorcing families, how do you not get cynical about divorce and marriage and things like that? Or like couples getting engaged? And
I frequently get that question. Most of my clients are really happy after they're done with the process. People I see feel really a cloud lifted from them when they get divorced. They have new independence. They are starting a new life. It's actually a really exciting time for people. So it doesn't get me down or depressed. I actually find it really uplifting to help people through the hardest part of their lives and seeing them start over. And then I keep in touch with my clients because I'm friends with my clients, and I see them get remarried. I see them. I see their children grow up, and I see all the happiness that comes after the fact. So for me, it's very rewarding work, and I don't view it as really depressing or down work. I view it as really work to help people get to that new part of their life.
Now, what's a lesson that they learn of having gone through a divorce, whether it was amicable or not, and then they go into a new relationship? What is kind of a lesson that a lot of them have learned for the next swing?
Some of them learn lessons, and some of them end back in my office and don't learn lessons.
So you have some frequent flyers.
I do, unfortunately.
You have a loyalty card.
But I, as part of my process, I'm always asking them, do you have a counselor that you work with? Do you have someone to help with your mental health issues? Because I can only do so much as their attorney. And I find that if I can connect them with someone to help them with their mental health issues, with a therapist that they have after I'm out of the picture, they will have much more success in moving on to a healthier relationship. So I think it's crucial, and Marcia probably could speak to this more, it's crucial for them to have a connection with someone, a mental health professional, to help them so they don't make the same mistakes.
Yes, and unfortunately, a lot of people make the same mistake twice.
Statistically.
Yes. And we do know that if you have divorced once, the divorce rate goes up. Your chance of a second divorce that rate goes up a little bit higher. But the clinical part of my practice, if somebody's gone through a divorce and they are coming to me afterwards to just kind of have that counseling for how do I not make that mistake twice, that's good.
But do they ask? Does
looking.
a typical person ask that?
Yeah, they will.
They'll say,
yeah,
"What am I doing wrong?" Or "What did I
Yes.
What didn't I see?"
Yes, let me look at why I'm attracted to somebody like my ex-wife or my ex-husband, and let me look at those characteristics and what about myself. They're willing to do some insight work, but a lot of people are not, and so they do tend to find themselves typically with the same type
Yeah,
of
I see that a
personality.
lot.
Like a pattern of.
Yeah.
Yes,
So people do have a type.
yes. There's a type.
What they like, and then they fall into that again.
They fall into it because it's their comfort zone. Is what feels most.
Do you, as a
comfortable.
therapist, we were working with these people, are you like, wow, if they would have come here a year ago, maybe I could have not had this happen? Do you ever see?
Possibly, yes. From when I'm working with couples on their marriage, and they come in, and sometimes there's so much conflict that you can't work through it.
But sometimes there might be where, man, if they would have had a third party in the mix of this, there might have been a way to kind of de-escalate some of this.
Yes, it could have been helpful to help. So let's say there was infidelity, trying to get through an infidelity issue. If they came in and worked on the symptoms and the problems that created the symptom of infidelity, they might have been able to work through that, and then to work through the infidelity. Many couples work through it and come out on the other side and do really well. So, divorce is not in their thoughts at that point.
Do you have any advice for the person? Like, what are the early stages of a divorce might be looming down the road? Are there any kind of symptoms that a person could say, hey, you know what? It looks like this could turn into something if we don't address it today.
Yes. So the two areas that create conflict in a marriage are you're usually conflicting about finances and also communication. In real estate, they say location, location,
Right.
location. From a mental health standpoint and a marital standpoint, I have coined communication, communication, communication.
Really?
So, yes. And for those that are getting married, if they are having difficulties communicating and a lot of conflict prior to the marriage, that's a red flag. You want to be able to work through those things prior to marriage. So it should be easy prior to marriage. Sometimes I will get a couple in that's divorcing that said, walking down the aisle, I knew it wasn't a good thing. And your eyes just got very wide, but that happens a lot. There were red flags before I was walking down the aisle. Well, we know that there were problems there. And
now, what are some symptoms of a couple not communicating well?
Well, symptoms of not communicating well is just increased conflict because the other party just is not hearing and understanding what one party is trying to say.
So if there's like kind of bickering or arguing, or they're
Sure.
always feeling like they're not listening to me.
Sure, they're not being heard. Absolutely.
So you deal more with those divorcing couples, but you involved in not only that, but with the children, and
Yes.
you see the children. So you probably you see them longer terms compared to Alyson's. Right.
A lot of times I'll see families post-divorce and help with the adjustment,
Yeah,
with
it's
the
a long
kids'
time.
adjustment.
Take note. I mean, I don't
It
know.
can be.
Typically,
It can be.
How
I
long
mean, typically after the divorce, if somebody's working with co-parenting, if there's a lot of conflict in the family and a lot of changes and adjustments, then I will see the family for a bit longer after the divorce. And it might not be every week. A lot of times, most of the times, it's not every week. With the hat that I wear as a parent coordinator, which deals with families who deal with a lot of conflict, I might see either as a parent coordinator or co-parent therapist, I might see somebody to just deal with a conflict. Once the conflict has been resolved, then I won't see them for months or maybe years. And then there's an issue that comes up 2 years down the line, and they need to be able to manage that conflict. They'll come back in, we'll talk about it, we'll work on it, and then I don't see them again.
I see.
And I find that if a couple is working with someone like Marcia, their chances of going back to court are significantly reduced. Because many times, if they have a relationship with someone like Marcia and there's a dispute, say, for example, the child is getting older and wants to go to sleepaway camp, and one parent wants them to go and one parent doesn't want them to go. That could be an issue where they might come back to a lawyer and say, I need to change my agreement, or I need to read it and see what it says. But sometimes if they have a relationship with a counselor, they can go in and communicate with Marcia's assistants and reach a resolution before it even gets to the lawyers. And that's a much more healthier way to be post-divorce.
Now, Alyson, do you meet the children at all, or your relationship was with just the adults?
As a lawyer, I very rarely, if at all, meet with the children. But I do serve as a guardian ad litem in cases when I'm appointed by the court to tell the judge my recommendations as to custody. And in that case, I absolutely meet with the children numerous times and get to know the children. So as part of my recommendation, I'm taking into account my observations and discussions with the children.
But when you're representing one of the parents, you're just looking at it through the lens of what this parent is telling you.
Correct. And that's why it's really helpful to collaborate with a mental health professional, because I could suggest to them, why don't you bring your child in to meet with Marcia? And one parent might be thinking, my child's 14 and my child wants to live with me. And then the other parent's thinking, no, that's not what I've heard. I've heard my child wants to live with me. And in Georgia, we actually have laws in place that a 14-year-old can elect which parent they want to live with. Well, in that situation, it would be wonderful for a child to be able to meet with someone like Marcia and go through their feelings and talk it out in a way so that we really understand what's going on with this child. Maybe they want to live with their dad because he just bought him a new cell phone, or maybe, something else is going on with this child. And so Marcia is really skilled at getting to the bottom of those type of issues.
So that must be rewarding work for you to be able to.
It is.
Because the children are the most vulnerable in this, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody's vulnerable, but the children are dealing with adult decisions.
Right. They're the kind of collateral damage.
Yes. And remember, the most important thing is a child needs to be able to have a really good relationship with both parents. So we want the kids to be able to, to continue to love both their mother and their father. Their mother and father might have conflict, which is why they're dealing with divorce. But it's not the children that are divorcing their parents.
Right.
So there's that change in the family system that we're looking at and saying, okay, you can still have a wonderful relationship. Remember, a child is part of mom and part of dad. And so as an adult, if mom is talking badly about dad, then mom is actually talking badly about part of the child. And you really have to be careful and watch that.
So you're teaching them coping skills?
Coping skills, yes.
And then you're giving them tools to kind of navigate this new waters for them?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And there are resources out there that, whether it's group support or individual support, the schools, some of the school systems, the elementary schools have group support for kids that are transitioning where their families are divorcing to help them manage just every day. They get into school and there was stress because maybe they're moving or maybe they haven't seen one parent for a while. And so schools are there to support people in the profession like I am. We're there to support the kids and, and just churches and synagogues and anybody is family and friends. If you don't take sides and you're there to nurture the children, then the children will do well. They will grow up to be healthy.
And then what about the information they're getting from other kids that have gone through divorce?
Right.
How do you manage that?
Be careful. We always say be careful about that because somebody might have, one friend might have had a family that had high conflict divorce. And another family, every family is different. Mm-hmm. Every divorce is different. And so I always encourage that parents talk to their children and let their children know what is going to happen for them. Kids really want to know, how is this affecting me? Well, if they ask questions in terms of how it's affecting them, go to what kids are thinking about. And the only things kids really care about is, how is it affecting school? Do I have to change schools? How is it affecting my social life? So socially, how's it affecting my extracurricular activities? And possibly my electronics, because that's so important to
rules,
kids.
right?
Right. So as long as those things, the kids are aware of how it's going to change things or not change it, kids are fine. They
They're
manage
resilient.
it. Absolutely. When kids know more information other than those 4 or 5 areas, then they're probably hearing too much about their parents' divorce.
Now, there's a TV show that has the parents living in the same house, and then the kids are in that, so that way the kids don't move. But the parents are like, one's in the basement, one's in the upstairs. You see that?
We call that nesting.
Is that a
And
thing now, or is that just a TV?
It's an old thing.
It is a thing, but it doesn't usually work very well. But I have seen it happen in cases where, on a temporary basis for a short term, if there aren't 2 homes, and we don't know the outcome of the case, I have seen where parents have successfully gone in and out of the home, and they've stayed with a friend or a family member so that their kids don't have to move. But on a long-term basis, that's
not sustainable.
That's not sustainable. Everyone needs their own space.
Right. I know in the financial crisis, that was not by choice. A lot of the times that it was difficult.
Correct.
The house was underwater or whatever, so they couldn't afford to.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And so nesting became popular probably about 20 years ago. I don't know if my timing is exact, but yes, it was something that people did. And sometimes as part of nesting, not just staying in the same house together, but they might, the adults might have one apartment outside of the house, and then one parent will come into the house and spend X number of days in the house with the children, and then that parent leaves and goes back to
So
the
the
apartment.
kids don't leave. The kids stay in
Correct.
place. And then the
Correct.
parents kind of.
I think that I'm sorry to interrupt, but the complication happens when they have, like, the parents have new boyfriends, girlfriends, and that's effect to the children. You know?
Yes.
Do you deal with that?
Yes, we do deal with introducing significant others into the equation.
Yeah.
And depending when that significant other comes into the equation depends on how we manage that. We
Yeah.
truly hope that you go through the divorce process and you heal a bit. You have to have some closings before you can have some new beginnings. Unfortunately, people don't always
Timing's
do
not
that.
always-
Right.
There are many, many cases where one or both have already moved on before the divorce has
mentally.
even
Yeah, that's
mentally
right.
and in another relationship before
Right.
the divorce is
Yeah.
even done. And I frequently have clients that either want to introduce that person to their children before it's really time, or a client that's really concerned about them being introduced to someone before they're even divorced. So we get those questions a lot.
Yeah.
Is there any good way to do this? Is it better to not introduce until, like, this is a real relationship, or, like, is there kind of rules with them?
Yes, the rule of thumb is, please don't introduce your child to everybody that you're dating. You might be so excited that you're divorced and new beginnings, and you start dating different people. Well, kids attach to somebody, and then for the adults, it's easy to say, I'm done with this relationship, time to move on.
Yeah.
But now the kids have had another loss. So
Right.
there's attaching and then losing and attaching and losing. You want to be in a significant relationship and then introduce the children. Now, you don't want to wait years and not tell the kids about this person, because you've then become entrenched in this relationship. And now you introduce the kids and you see that this is like oil and water. This
Right,
isn't working.
and it's new to them, and you already kind of
Yeah.
you're kind of locked
And
in.
many times before they introduce, they are already living with the new person, so that kids, when there is a day to have kids, they already there with a new person.
Well, I hope that somebody does not choose to live with somebody else prior to introducing that person to the children. It's if you've been dating somebody for a while and you feel like this is going to be a pretty long-term relationship, then it is perfectly fine to introduce the kids. And you do it slowly. You don't have that person with the kids all the time.
Yeah.
Once you do that introduction, you want that one-on-one time with your children and then bring that person into their lives slowly.
Right, because this is going to impact how the kids are going to have relationships later.
Absolutely. You are mirroring.
You're role modeling the behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Your kids are watching everything from your marriage to your divorce to your co-parenting relationships and how you move
Right.
on.
Do you find that people are self-aware enough to realize that?
Well, I hope that people are self-aware enough to realize that. Some people choose not to look so closely.
Most of the people that I send to Marcia are in extreme high conflict cases, and they are not able to see that. And that's the goal with sending them to someone like
Right.
Marcia, to help them have self-reflection and change some of their
Because that's not your role.
Right.
You're
Right.
advocating for them to get the outcome they desire,
Correct.
right?
But I frequently hear from clients when they're having issues with their spouse. You know, my husband, he's telling the kids all about this divorce, and he's tainting them against me. He's alienating them against me. These are things that I hear, and that may trigger me to say, maybe you need to go to someone like Marcia to discuss these things. And then I might even call the other attorney and say, are you hearing what I'm hearing? They really need some help in getting along for the sake of their children. Let's send them to Marcia.
And then is it easy to have that conversation with the other attorney, or are they usually amenable to that?
It depends on the attorney, but I find that the family law community, the family law bar, we all know each other, and we all know who good professionals are. And so most of the times attorneys welcome the input from someone like Marcia, because we know that she's going to help our
Right,
clients.
it's not going to hurt the situation.
Correct. And in fact, there's been many cases where I've been able to send clients to Marcia in the beginning of a divorce where I know custody is going to be an issue. But before we go down the litigation path, before we start arming up and getting a guardian ad litem and getting the courts involved, I frequently will say, why don't you give it a try with Marcia? Go with your spouse, have some conversations. Maybe she can make inroads. And there's been times where they've come back to me with a full parenting plan, and the attorneys have done very little work on it. We may give advice along the way. We may look at it at the end to make sure it's legally sound. But Marcia's done the hard work with them to get them to a point of agreement without them having to go in front of a judge.
So it diffuses some of the emotions.
Yes, and it gives them a different perspective.
Right.
Very interesting.
Good stuff.
Yeah, great.
You learn a lot.
Learn a lot.
You know, don't get divorced.
Never.
That's the lesson.
I want to get there, but it's,
But if you do get divorced, call me.
That's right.
that's right.
Or me.
Super lawyer. Yeah.
That's very
She's good.
Good. So how do we find both of you?
right. So, Alyson, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, my firm is Ellis Funk, and so we have a website, Ellis Funk, ELLISFUNK.com. And my email address is Lembeck, ALEMBECK, at ellisfunk.com.
And then you're active on social media, you said?
Yes, I'm on
Mom.
Facebook
Constantly,
and
constantly on for Jewish moms.
yeah, the Jewish Moms of Atlanta has been a great referral source.
I didn't know they have 4,000 members. Chris found out and told me.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm on
very
Facebook,
active.
and there's pretty much, if you Google my name, you will find me.
Yeah.
All right. And Marcia, what's the best way to find you?
Best way to find me is through Atlanta Behavioral Consultants. You can Google atlantabehavioralconsultants.com and you will find me there, or you can look me up under Marcia Schechtman, which good luck with that. But
How do you
it's
spell that?
MARSHASCHECHTMAN. And it's actually at Atlanta, N is in North, P is in Paul, C is in car.com. And I won't get into why that's different than Atlanta Behavioral Consultants, but if you use my name, and yes, we're also on Facebook, but people don't typically find me off of Facebook.
Oh, I
It's
see.
usually Psychology Today, or just going to our website, looking up divorce and divorce support.
Yeah.
Well,
Great.
thank you both for sharing your story. It's such
Pleasure.
important work. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
All right.
Great
Well, thank
job.
you, Junko. This was Junko's Health, Wealth, and Happiness Hour, brought to you by our good friends at Fujiyama Wealth Management. We'll see you next time.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer, member, FINRA/SIPC. Registered representative, securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member, FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisor representative, Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Fujiyama Wealth Management and Cambridge are not affiliated.